Descent into Dread Volume 1, Skater XL, and Targi the Expansion. This is Staying In. Pete, can I ask, have you managed to spend it all yet?
Oh, gee.
Spend what?
Chris.
Look, right, okay, Dan, you missed out on this, right? So,
Can I be in control of the story up to a place, and then I'll...
yeah, I mean, it feels like you being in control. You being in control is sometimes dangerous, but yeah, we'll allow it. Let's go for it.
Okay, Sam, paint me a picture with your imagination brush.
So yesterday, Chris and Pete got together to play some games, some Ghost Recon Wildlands. Even though I was free that evening, had a pretty tough day at work, wasn't really feeling like actually getting involved with the play, but I still wanted to be involved with the chat. So I hopped on the party, got myself a drink, and I thought, oh, this is something I've not used ever on the PlayStation, and I pressed the share play button. And so I sent a little invite to Pete to say, can I watch you play your game? So Pete accepted.
Yep.
In hindsight, I probably shouldn't have.
Yep.
So Pete accepted, and within a couple of seconds, and I was actually amazed that it really worked. And I was
It's really good.
It's really good. I was able to watch Pete playing with Chris and then chat with them on the party. So I was basically like, watching
like
a Twitch stream or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, it's like a personal Twitch stream, isn't it?
Yeah. And it was really good, and it suited the mood for that moment. And after about an hour, Pete was like, see how I'm shifting the blame here? Pete was like, I wonder what this does. And he pressed a button, and then a notification flashed up on my screen which said, you are now in control. And suddenly, I was in control of Pete's character and avatar in Ghost Recon's Wildlands. So immediately what I did was, menu, edit appearance. And
Obviously.
yeah, and so I gave Pete's character a new T-shirt, which is called Mondays, and it's got like a croissant and a coffee on it, and
it's a very, very nice T-shirt. I'll tell you that.
And gave him some bright blue denim jeans, and then jokingly we all thought, surely this wouldn't let me buy some stuff using your account, would it? Would it? So.
Oh no.
A few menus later, and Pete's watching all of this.
I was about to say, why is Pete? I'm assuming at this point, Pete can't grab hold of his play back.
Yeah, I mean, so I could, but here's the thing: I was pouring myself another drink.
And meanwhile, I'd cleaned out an entire village, freed some mercenaries, got some skill points, and Pete was just
Luckily, so there Pete and I were on the now Ubisoft Ghost Recon Wildlands store. Maybe fortuitously for Pete was like, oh, go to the limited time offers tab of the menu. So I went to the limited time offers, and I was like, oh, this is crazy. Like, this is letting me get much further on in these menus than I thought it would be. So I had a look at the offers, and there was everything from a $1.99 bag of credit to spend in the game up to a £40 bag of credit to spend in the game. Oh
my goodness.
And it was at that point that I thought, maybe so I kind of pressed OK on the £40 one just to and then I thought, no, this feels wrong. I've gone too far. Pete, back to your control.
So slight wrinkle on that. At the point at which control was handed back to me was the point at which the PlayStation said, hold on a second, the person who's not the account owner is attempting to purchase something. It then handed the controls back to me, right? So Sam didn't purchase anything. He got up to purchasing, and it was like, is this really something you want to do? Hands it and it then hands straight over.
That sounds sensible. That sounds like
very sensible of Sony to allow for this. They're very, very sensible. Now I want to just shift back now 2 or 3 years of development time, because in Ubisoft's infinite wisdom, and they're a very smart bunch.
Well.
Well, you know what? Let's not talk about that. So when they were making the 7 out of 10 cover-based shooter Wildlands, they accidentally or purposefully, who knows, decided that when you entered into looking at their Uplay like account stuff, so this isn't the shop itself, they will, without telling you, and I would argue antithetically, swap the cross button, which means advance, with the circle button, which means back. So on PlayStation, most of the time you'll hit circle to go back, X to go forward, cross to go forward. On Uplay, they just swap that round. And that's not like a choice, they just do it, right? They also mislabel it. So it still says cross to go forward, circle to go back, right? And that's on their Uplay thing. It also turns out that that also applies to confirming purchases, and only confirming purchases. So you can get all the way up to, do you want to make this purchase? And then at the point you say no is the point at which they've swapped the buttons round, and you go accidentally yes. And it was like, and so little spinny button in the bottom right hand corner, and I was like, this is taking an awful long time for no. And I was like, I thought things had just gone wrong. Picked up my phone, and there's a lovely email from PayPal saying, thanks very much. We've just charged your account $39.99, and you're the proud owner of 15,000 Who Gives a Toss credits. So, and this is the thing. So I was like, have I just accidentally purchased PlayStation credit? Oh, no. I've purchased £40 of in-app credit for a very fun. Absolutely. No qualms on the actual shooting and running around and stuff. But a very middle-of-the-line 3-year-old game. And just to be clear, I spent £20 on Ghost Recon Wildlands. I bought it brand new. I have trebled the cost of my investment by a single user experience design decision. So we were sat there like all of us were like, what? like, you know, because honestly, you end up in that situation and you just sort of think that is either the most evil or the smartest, like, UI design change. Like, it is danger. And it was a really big set of like. So I also didn't have I believe Sony automatically turns off the request password when at payment. So like it just went through. Really like. So I've put in a refund request.
This situation, I know we spoke about it in a previous pod, but it's not been too long since our trip to Budapest, where a similar thing happened to you, where you couldn't work out how the cash point would work. And I just used it. I had no problems. You know, I can't speak Hungarian.
All right. Okay, hold on.
But apparently for you...
Show off.
Which meant that, like, literally 24 hours before we were leaving Hungary and heading back home...
Which just to give clarification, doesn't use the euro. It uses their own specific currency, which is used in their country.
It's like if Ubisoft was a nation state.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the conversion rate is quite similar, where £40 gets you about 113,000 Hungarian.
And I just remember you getting really annoyed and perplexed at this hole in the wall, just tapping buttons randomly, and then was it like how much was it? It was like 120 quid's worth.
200? Was it 200 quid?
It was about 200 quid.
200 quid's worth of Hungarian currency.
And like, it's, you know, Hungary is, and just to be clear, Hungary is an absolutely beautiful place.
It's one of my favourite places in the world.
If you want to eat, if you want to live, like, general living standards are fairly cheap. So it's actually really quite difficult to spend £200 in a day. Like, it's actually quite hard.
Just to let you know that at current exchange rate, that's 76,000 Hungarian forints.
Yeah. It took about half an hour to come out of the machine.
So I've put in for a refund. And I've been accelerated. Just to give you an update, I have been accelerated to the special cases team.
Oh my god!
Which I was like, oh no.
Honestly, I feel so like last night I went to bed and I told Lisa about it and she found it hilarious and everyone else seemingly has found it hilarious. I just feel absolutely part of me is mortified. Another part of me is just like, oh, imagine we've done that on GTA where it's like 150 quid or something like that. Like,
yeah. Oh,
like
believe you me, I got off lightly.
Yeah.
Oh man. So basically, hopefully by the time we record another podcast, I'll be able to give an update and I'll be able to say whether or not I got my money back, or if I got PlayStation credit, or if I've just bought the most expensive hat in Tom Clancy's Wildlands.
So you're not gonna share it with us? We're not all gonna be fully kitted out in like matching uniforms.
I would love to if I could, but
can you not gift things?
I don't think you can. No. I just imagine there's some accountants in France who are just like, who is this guy and why is he spending 40 quid on a 3-year-old game? Just.
It's like alarm's gone off. Like, lads, someone's doing it.
Yeah.
Someone's doing it. We knew this deal was going to catch someone.
Other exciting things that have happened recently in the world of video games. Top class. Do you know what? I genuinely, you have to look on the bright side of everything that's happening this year, and it's been a weird one. But the good thing is that the extreme sports games are back, and I cannot believe it. Like last year, I'm taking my glasses off because I need to make points.
Okay, with your glasses.
With my glasses. Hold on. If I do this, it'll make me look very. I mean, obviously, listeners.
Are you going to use them as an extension?
Yeah, an extension of my hand, as if to say, now listen here, this is why the Tony Hawk's reboots will be good this time. It's obviously the Tony Hawk's reboots coming out, and yes, I have pre-ordered them. Skater XL, which I bought last year, and I'll talk about it in a second, is coming out of early access into full release and coming out on consoles. And yes, I've pre-ordered it. I've double dipped. I've pre-ordered it again on PlayStation 4. I've just pre-ordered Descenders from my old boss, Mike Rose, who's runs Noble Robots, which is a downhill procedural mountain biking game. Skate 4. Well, we think maybe Skate 4.
The team behind it have been asked to do something.
So some members of the team have been asked back because that studio is long disbanded, and there was a horrible rumor that there was a Skate mobile, free-to-play mobile game in the works as well. And if this is that, then this is poorly chosen, EA. Like, this is not the way to announce, like, we're doing Skate again, and it's like a free-to-play, I don't know, like Candy Crush clone or something. No. But possibly Skate 4, or a Skate reboot, or a Skate collection. And these guys and girls over at Team Reptile are making a game called Bomb Rush Cyberfunk, which is a Jet Set Radio spiritual sequel. Like, this is the space. This is just 2020. Like, honestly, like, this is I have a horrible feeling that I might have caused all the bad stuff in 2020, because at the end of 2019 I was like, fingers crossed, wish upon a star, I'd really like some extreme sports games to come back. And it's almost like things just went too far, because like there are so many options here of all of this stuff coming out. Like, it is amazing, because, and the reason I'm so excited is extreme sports games are genuinely one of my absolute favourite genres of video games. I love them, and I know you're the same, Sam.
Well,
right?
Yeah, but not to quite a degree. And also, I've got to kind of keep 40 quid in my back pocket just in case.
Just in case, you never know. And trusting Pete, he'll accommodate. He'll ask you to accommodate for inflation, Sam. So.
Oh yeah. They got back to me, and yeah.
I've got to hire a solicitor and
just to feed this extreme sports habit.
Exactly.
But one of, I think, for quite a lot of people our age, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater was, the seminal. Sort of one of the seminal games of the PlayStation around that time. That soundtrack, those levels. My brother was probably is more of an extreme sports fan than I am, both in terms of both video games and actually like in real life. Like
Right.
he rollerbladed, BMX'd, skateboarded. Me and him used to stay up late to watch like X Games reruns on Channel 4,
That's cool.
5. I remember we taped Tony Hawk's 900 and we used to like play and watch it together.
Yeah.
Like just over and over and over. And also we used to have like promo videos that were done by like skate companies like Puberty and like, you know, with like no effects sort of like soundtracks and all this and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, it's like a massive part of like my childhood, especially like my memories with my brother are like engaging in like extreme sports, and he was always like better than me, and I was, whenever he got like a new pair of rollerblades, like I would always get his hand-me-downs.
Yeah.
But I'm skeptical about the Tony Hawk's thing, only because I've been burnt so many times, and I wonder how much it's going to be a bit like the Crash Bandicoot remake, which is kind of like just feasting off nostalgia rather than actually making something like worthwhile.
I can appreciate that. I think like the just on that like trailer reveal and stuff like that, I thought they were really smart in that they were very quick to compare the original visuals and the follow-up and basically say, look, we're trying to make this as close as possible. The fact that they went back and relicensed all the old music, the fact that like that they're like, it's Tony Hawk's 1 and 2, and it's not, like, that is a very, weirdly, that's quite a bold statement of like, yeah, like 3's very good. I know people who make an argument for Thug being the best one. They're wrong, but that's fine. Like, you know, there's a bunch of good ones, but there is, with those first 2, there is definitely that is like a sort of generation of Tony Hawks that people really, really, you know, like have fond feelings for, you know, playing horse, you know, long into the night, for example, or whatever. But yeah, you're right. Like those games were like, they were super foundational for all the music I listened to. Like, honestly, like without them, like I really don't feel, you know, those games are to blame for who I am, basically, which is, you know, a good thing or a bad thing.
And I think the other reason I'm skeptical about Tony Hawk's in general is that for me, playing those games, like how I experienced them was always in line with like my natural curve in terms of like my exposure to this world and also my ability as a game player. So Tony Hawk's, actually, most people may have forgotten that it actually was just basically like an arcade game. It was
definitely.
like very much like not reflective of real life skateboarding. It was pretty similar to like playing something like Street Fighter or Tekken. Like it's about
it's a platformer. Honestly, it's a platformer.
And remembering combos and keeping things linked together, like that was a skill. And then as I got older, like my brother very quickly moved from Tony Hawk's on into like Thrasher, Skate and Destroy, which had a bit more of a, in terms of a soundtrack, like that soundtrack is I find it's like immensely
still good.
Yeah, it still holds up. And then like obviously, as technically I got better at playing games and the games got better at technically representing what skating was, I think that's why I find, and I'm skeptical about Tony Hawk's, is that feeling of what I always wanted from that game was that feeling of like the freedom of exploration, like being on a skateboard gives you. And that's why I love the Skate series so much, because you got the soundtrack, but you also got the mechanical thrill of exploring a space, exploring an open world, essentially, and being able to find those lines within it. And also being able to share that with another player. So, like, I feel like going back to that Tony Hawk's game will be very dissatisfying, because mechanically I think it will feel outdated, and I think it will just expose it for its flaws rather than like actually what it captured at the time. Well,
we'll have to see about that one. I went back and played THPS 2 and it was still good. So, and that was like literally the other day. So I was like, I've got high hopes. Surely they won't mess it up this time, guys. I'm genuinely hopeful. But the skate games, I completely agree with you. Like it was a very different feeling. It was definitely more like a mental leap from Thrasher rather than Tony Hawk's, right? Like, and so then obviously the skate games came along and you and I played those a lot. Like a lot. And then 3 came out and it didn't do very well, because, I mean, the first 2 didn't do very well either. And 3 did fine, but it didn't do gangbusters, and that's what Electronic Arts works on. Yeah, they don't want to take the big risk of a flop. They want gangbusters. They want your Star Warses and your FIFAs. They don't want your syndicates and your skates. So there was this big sort of gap in the market where there was a bunch of people who really love these games, but not enough for a big company to go ahead and do them. And thank you to the indie game scene. The indie game scene came along and provided not one but two alternatives. And the first was Session. I played the sort of like early demo event. I really didn't like it. And then Skater XL came out, and it is Skate 4 basically. Like, it isn't, and that isn't to do it a disservice. It is trying to be this. It has the same dual stick. Your left stick controls your left foot. Your right stick controls your right foot. R1, L1. They'll control like grabs and stuff like that. And you got your actual board turning on L2, R2. Stuff like that. It is to explain it to somebody who's not played Skate before. The reason that people get excited about the Skate games is because the entire world and everything in it is open to you from the very beginning as soon as you're dropped in them, and that's exactly the same with Skater XL. Your ability to play that game is entirely driven by your skill, ingenuity, and creativity. It's not about leveling up your character. It's not about like unlocking stuff. It's just, if you can see it and you think you can trick on it, then you can, like, as long as you can get to it, right? And Skater XL, like, takes that philosophy and just runs with it. And it's been in early access for a really long time. So, yeah, I mean, like, I've been playing it for 6 months now, and I was late to the party for the early access version. And it's had this really slow development cycle where it seems like it was a really small team, because they were the folks that did a game, I believe it was called Skater, and that was on mobile. And I reviewed that back in the day when I was a mobile games journal. And that was very good. And then they went on, I think, and decided to go ahead and do this Skater XL, which is a full-fledged thing. And the early access one is like, has been a very bare environment. Just the physics, just the ability to do flip tricks by, holding the right stick down, then flicking it up to do an ollie, for example, and then by adding in different combinations of the left and right stick, you then start to tweak that out into heel flips and kick flips. If you move the right stick to the side, like down and right, you'll do a pop shove it because you're pushing your board out. So all of these things, for sort of non-skaters, people who aren't really au fait with all this stuff, these are like a single button press in Tony Hawk's. Like, you just press the button and you do the thing. With this, like, if you want to do a bit where you skate along and then you jump up and then you slide with your board down a metal rail, and then you spin your board around and land it again. Yeah, it's called a grind. And then you spin your board out at the end, and then you land, and then you keep going in the same direction without falling off. In Tony Hawk's, that's like 3 buttons. In Skater XL, that is a very complicated set of inputs, which starts to become second nature. And like, that might sound like, there's surely the abstraction is better because you're able to do the thing more easily. And actually, the answer is no. It's actually much more impressive. So I'm actually on the Skater XL Reddit, and like, you just watch these videos and you see these tricks of people. And again, in Tony Hawk's, it'd be like, well, who cares? But in Skater XL, you're watching this stuff and you're like, this is incredible. Like, this is an incredible achievement to just get to this rail, or to go down this line is so thoughtful. I'd never thought of using the space in this way. And just like Skate, and I think this tells you a lot about my feelings towards it. Just like Skate, it buries itself into your mind to the point of, if you are walking down the street or you are in a different space, you look at a handrail and you go, grind that.
Yeah, it's
and
affordances.
You're actually thinking about the space a lot more. It's just absolutely phenomenal. It's been an incredible early access. Like, as it's moved on, and you've seen like more environments, more spaces, more things to do, more flexibility with how you use the board. Because it's a comprehensive physics simulation, they've actually added abilities to do tricks that technically don't exist in the game, but are in there, right? So one of the things is that you can, it's very, very smart. It's always cool when you can see this. Let's say, for example, you've got a handrail. you can skate towards the handrail, jump up, kick the board from underneath you, and you know, ollie it's called, and you can move your feet and hold them in the position so that the feet are higher than the rail, but the board is lower than the rail. And so your body passes above the rail, the board goes underneath it, and then you reconnect your feet to the board as you've passed it. Like, that isn't a built-in trick. It's just the physics engine is doing its thing. It is absolutely phenomenal.
It reminds me a lot, from hearing you talk about it and from the reviews I've seen of it, like a Guitar Heroes type aesthetic where all the notes are there, but that combination of notes, the environment is the complexity of songs, and it's about getting that rhythm to kind of play that music, really, as you're kind of skating, really. And what the skate parks represent is, I can compose something out of that, you know. I can play this.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. Like, I would say if you're a fan of like the Guitar Hero thing, this is actually much closer to something called Rocksmith. Like, Rocksmith is like, you are literally plugging it into a real guitar and you are going to try and follow the thing on the screen, right? This is that. This is getting incredibly close to, you know, to actual, like, having to think about how you move through this space. As I say, like, I've been playing it since through about halfway through the early access. You know, I've been dipping in for you know, hours at a time, and it gives me that same feeling that the first Skate gave me, the first Skate's demo gave me, of I could skate here forever in this tiny little confined space. I could skate this for hours and hours and hours, because I can just come up with new stuff. I can just think, oh, what if I forward flipped here? What if I did a hard flip here rather than a nollie pop shove it, like all of this sort of stuff, right? The game's coming out soon. It's on. I mean, it's already out. You can buy it on PC now, but the actual 1.0 release is coming out real soon, and that is coming out on consoles as well, day and date. And I cannot wait, because basically that is going to be my new audiobook game. That is going to be my new zone out, just go and skate around this, you know, area and figure out some cool new things. There's no pressure, there's no challenges, there's no timers, there's no nothing. Like, it's just go and be creative in this space that we've made for you.
And Pete, have you ever skated in real life?
I have skateboarded, I have rollerbladed, I have BMX'd, I've tried snowboarding.
Oh yes, I remember that.
Yeah, I've tried all those things. Which one do you think I was the best at?
Oh, I think, right, your past history in terms of, like, the time what you ran.
You mean sprinted, Sam?
Yeah, it's sprinted, sorry. I think that rollerblading's off the cards. I think your general level of coordination means skateboarding's off the card. And
I think to be fair, there's only one of those which isn't heavily reliant on excellent balance.
Yeah, BMXing.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I was definitely way better at rollerblading. Like, I was actually all right at it. Like to the point of, like,
he was cast in Starlight Express.
That's right. Yeah. I want to be a train. Yeah. I used to love that stuff. And in fact, you know, like, so basically, I've got my fingers crossed for a new a reboot of Rolling. Like, or Aggressive Inline, either of those video game gods, please. That'd be nice.
What are the terrors upon 2020 will Pete bring by wanting inline skating back in the video game genre?
Here's the thing. If I were to get a new Rolling and a new Dave Mirra BMX, I would also be buying a bunker.
I just love that idea that we can rewrite the Greek myths, so when Pandora opens the box and all the Furies come out, they're actually named after different extreme sports video games.
So, I went away for a few days on a yurting holiday.
Very nice.
So I partook in some alcoholic beverages. None of your beers, none of that. I stuck with my gins. A nice gin and tonic. In the sunshine, sat outside. Outdoor barbecue, fire pits, outdoor pizza oven. All delightful.
Does it feel good to? Because obviously we're getting to the point now, and this will be a matter of historical record. We're getting to the point now where things are starting to open up a little bit more again, and you're able to go out and do things and stuff like that. Like, is it quite liberating? Is it going out and being in a space that isn't yours? Like, how do you feel about it? Like, because obviously, you have normal life, like outside of what's going on at the moment. You have normal life, and then you work and work and play and play and work and work and play and play, and then like you go on holiday and it's lovely. Whereas in this situation, it kind of feels like maybe it's a bit more. Maybe it's a bit more.
It's an interesting, because for me, I've throughout the entire lockdown process, because my wife is pregnant, she's kind of stayed. She's not really been able to go out and do a lot of stuff, so she's had to stay. So I've had to do everything that needs going out, all the shopping, everything like that. I've had to go out, so I've actually gone out quite a lot. So I haven't felt that sense of kind of containment that a lot of people have. But also this going on holiday, I went with some family with the appropriate kind of family groups and stuff like that. But the way it was, there was a number of yurts, but they're all in like one big field, and we had it to ourselves. So it was actually, we were still separate from everyone. It was just like us. It was absolutely lovely. Because got kids there running around, and everyone just there playing games, just basically sitting in the sunshine, but in just a big quiet field surrounded by sheep. So there was no kind of sense of being around people. Like if you go somewhere else, go to a town or anything like that, it was very much you drive to this place and then there's no one else there. You kind of see the owners every now and again. So I didn't get a sense of that, of it being massively different. It was kind of like a COVID lockdown holiday kind of thing, because you're in that a strange environment for a holiday where you're just on your own in a field for as lovely as it is. And Chris, I know you've been yurting in the past.
I love it.
It's the way to camp. It really is.
Outdoor shower. Ooh.
Oh no, we had indoor showers. We had indoor toilets. We had a kitchen.
I mean, I had an indoor toilet. Just put that out there. Yeah. I mean,
the shower and the toilet weren't one of the same.
I saw that you made a pizza in a pizza oven.
I did, yeah. So that the kind of the property that owns it, they offer like a pizza night if you want it. So they will bring down all the ingredients for you, like all the ready-made dough and stuff like that. So then what you do is you just stretch out the dough, you make up your own pizza. They give you all that. They give you the sauce, they give you the cheese, everything like that. So you make the pizza as you want it, and then you just slide it into the pizza oven. They tell you how to kind of heat it, because you've got to start heating up the pizza in like 3 or 4 hours in advance to get it to the right kind of temperature. So you do all that, and they explain to you how to do it, and then they just leave you to it, and you kind of make it yourself. And I think they give like, you can, depending on what you pay for, they get like 10 different pizzas and stuff like that. They're not massive pizzas, but when you've got a group of people, you just put in loads of different toppings and it's absolutely delightful, delicious, may I say, as well, because pizza is like my number one. So I was very, very happy.
We're aware of your pizza related activities.
yeah.
I mean, you say like that, it sounds a bit sinister.
We're watching you.
You'll be pleased to know, gents, I spoke in the last episode about my wonderful local board game cafe, which will be opening soon.
Oh, good.
I know, which is great. But I also got a text the other day from my local comic book shop saying, Chris, we're back in business, and I have 2 copies of Undiscovered Country waiting for you.
Oh my
by
God.
Scott Snyder. And I went in there the other day, and yes, things are slowly returning back to normal. And I've been in that kind of comic mood. I've been really slightly craving that, and I've resisted the temptation to order them in or kind of read them online per se, because I've been waiting for my comic emporium to be open. However, I've been very lucky enough to be sent a review copy for an anthology, a compendium of comics that is coming out in August 2020, and you can actually pre-order it on Comixology. And that is Descent into Dread, Volume 1. Now, Dan, if you hear those words, Descent into Dread, what are you thinking? What are you thinking right off the bat? What kind of a comic book do you think this is?
I'm not gonna go with like light and frothy. I don't think I'm going to it for a light, pleasant experience. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking it's going to be dark and perhaps scary. Lots of dark colours, lots of reds, lots of dark reds and blacks in there, I think.
Well, you're half right. It's in black and white. So,
But the cover's red.
Yeah. Yes, it's and this comes from the writing team Dalton Shannon and Wells Thompson of 4 Color Comics, and this volume is published by caliber comics. And you remember when you were at school, I don't know if this ever happened to you, but there was a mate of mine at school called Ben Hodgkins, and I'd sit next to him on the bus every day. Incidentally, now he's my parents' postman, actually. Not just my parents, but the area.
I was going to say, your parents, like I just imagine your parents are like in the mansion, like, I'm sent to the postman.
But like sometimes on our school bus journeys in the morning, when we're sat on the front row, sat behind our very angry bus driver, he would we'd kind of swap those kind of very short horror stories that have that little bit of a twist ending. Do you ever have any of those that did the rounds at school that were kind of like urban legends? And I love those kind of twist endings. And as a child, and like far too young than I should have been, I was watching shows like The Outer Limits. Yeah, The Outer Limits is fantastic. The Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Or even things like The Treehouse of Horror and The Simpsons, where you get those short little snippets and it becomes like an anthology episode, but they've always got that slightly horrific, gruesome twist. And I really do quite like that because the horror is quite concise, it gets to the point, and there's something I find quite elegant about being able to have that kind of narrative structure in a very compressed manner. And what's great about this particular anthology is that you've got 12 stories that are each like a few pages long, a range of different very talented artists, and there's something for everyone here, and they have that kind of nice kind of horror twist, and they're horror stories that are spiced with other genres. So there'll be like a sci-fi horror, there'll be like a teen horror, slasher horror, this kind of thing, or just like a monster movie kind of genre. And maybe this isn't the right time for me to be reading this now. Maybe this is something that I'd kind of like read more in like October time, winter, when the
spookier months.
Yeah, exactly. When the daylight is shorter, say, for example. But it's been really lovely to just dip into a story and leave it there for a few pages and then kind of revisit it later. And, you know, it's over 100 pages long. And
would you say it's similar kind of to like a comic book version of like a Black Mirror type thing where you have certain genres, but there is a horrific kind of slant to it? So you have a sci-fi or you have a fantasy genre, but there is that kind of grotesque or horrific element to it, which kind of just tweaks the whole thing around a little bit.
Yeah, it's exactly. And they actually, if you on the pre-order page, they actually do use Black Mirror as an example in that regard, actually, in terms of what they're in terms of comparisons. And yeah, this does some quite interesting things actually, where every time you think you've got a clear sense of what the narrative is doing, it will subvert your expectations, which is really lovely. And there's the kind of sci-fi horror which feels a bit like Event Horizon, you know, the fingerprints there. There's the one that's the final scream that feels a bit like Cabin in the Woods. And, you know, in the way that film kind of pokes fun of that particular genre trope of the kind of teen horror. You've got lots of that happening here, and it's done in such a wonderful, concise way. Some of the artwork's fantastic here. Just a shout out to Kath Lobo and her art in the story Rubbing Elbows. It reminded me a lot of Francis Manapul Sam from The Flash, from the New 52, that we both like. And also Mr. Fishley, the artist, reminded me a lot of the art of Jonathan Case's. I don't know if you've ever read the Image graphic novel, Green River Killer, which is a kind of a black and white graphic novel of a real life detectives tracking down of this notorious serial killer, and it's his son who writes the graphic novel based on his father's account. It's a very interesting book. Fun fact, I read it from cover to cover in Amsterdam airport in the shop while I was waiting for my flight. Don't do that.
I bet they were pleased with that.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
But
banned for life.
But like my favourite one is Chasing the Sun, which is drawn by Mary Lando. Just gorgeous artwork. And just the mythos of that story. It does that wonderful thing where, like, in 6 pages, you feel like you've kind of engaged in this larger story, this incredible mythos that's just there beneath the surface. A bit like, has anyone read that book by Italo Calvino, Invisible Cities? It's a great book. If you're ever too busy and you think, I can't commit to a book, pick up Invisible Cities, because it's a story of when Marco Polo is in front of the Emperor Kublai Khan, and he has to recount his... Marco Polo! He has to recount his exploits, and he talks about all the cities he's visited around the world. and they're fictional cities, but they're kind of slightly based on real life. And every city has about a page and a half of text, but in that 1 page and a half, you've got what feels to be an entire novel, an entire world there. It's just a gift, and you feel like you've had this really incomplete experience in just a few pages. And in particularly in one of these last stories in this book, Chasing the Sun, you get that here. Another one feels a bit like Hellboy. I don't know if any of you have read Mike Mignola's Hellboy, but again, that beautiful kind of stark use of black, almost like it has a black backdrop and everything else is coloured in like white or colour. But my favourite Hellboy stories were those short little vignettes, which were like cautionary tales. And that's what this is really, is a series of nice, interesting cautionary tales that really showcase a wonderful range of artists and some really, really interesting writing from Dalton Shannon and Wells Thompson. A particular shout out, strange coincidence, one of the artists in this book is Leonardo Marcello Grassi, who actually, ironically, was one of the artists on Undiscovered Country that I picked up from my local comic book seller. So it kind of all goes full circle, really. But
it all comes back around.
But so you can now go online to Comixology and pre-order a PDF, which is how I read it, and it was lovely on my tablet. And I recommend you do so, really. You may think, actually, now in the current climate, I don't want to engage in anything horrific. But I'd say, actually, this is quite nice. This won't remind you of the real world. It'll allow you to escape, but feel that wonderful, pleasing sensation of having your spine tingled.
Yeah, and I appreciate anything that gives you like a chance to dip in and out. Like, I'm one of these people who, when they start reading, I need to get to the end of a chapter, otherwise I can't put the book down.
Yeah.
Like, I saw something the other day, and it was just like, advice on how to like get better reading, and one of it was just like, read for 30 minutes, no matter where you start or where you stop. Just read for 30 minutes every day. And I was like, nope, can't do that because I'm stopping at a chapter.
And I'm reading a Dan Brown book. And a chapter is like 50 words.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I really appreciate that kind of feeling of picking up something and having that complete experience all in one, especially when it comes to comic books. So it reminds you how they did the 1,000 comics issues of Action Comics and Detective Comics, where it was like loads of different artists and writers who'd had history with both of these characters, Superman and Batman, coming and doing like an anthology style thing for this celebration for their 1,000 issues. So yeah, I'm really interested with this, and especially comics horror. I really, really like.
And I think that there'll be some stories that you might bounce off, but there will always be something that you will like, because it really does do some really interesting things with the horror genre. So, like, if there's subgenres of horror that you like, you'll be covered here completely.
As we've sort of been getting used to, like, seeing people again, I'm slowly having to, like, sort of put part of my board game collection away, because anyone who's been to my house will know that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 drop zones, hot points of board games around my house.
Right.
And each of those drop zones and hotspots caters for a different need, different requirement. In the room that I'm currently in now, there's a hot zone in the bottom left-hand corner that is for some big group games, so like Taverns of Tirthon 4, Dixit, Captain Sonar, Mysterium, all live in that big box down there. Upstairs, I have a cupboard which is a hot zone for sort of bigger games, but we kind of don't get them to the table as often as I would like to. So like Blood Bowl's up there, Great Western Trail, King of Tokyo, just like stuff that I like, but it's, it's not hot property at the moment. And then the sort of like erogenous zones of my board game collection.
Right. I'll tell you what, I'm going to think twice next time you say go and grab us a board game.
Go and grab us a board game. The 2 chests of drawers. I've got 2 chests of drawers, and they're like full to the brim of like my quick, like easy to play like card games like The Mind, Illusion, Monikers. There's like several packs of decks of cards in there. Go Cuckoo. Also, like most of the party games live in there as well, because that's like kind of the hot party action. And then also I have a a special place which is just for my 2-player games. So I have a special place dedicated to nothing but 2-player games that sort of me and my wife like exclusively play. And there's 2 reasons why I have quite a big 2-player game collection. First of all is that like
You've got a gaming problem.
I've got a gaming problem. Okay, so 3 reasons. I've got a gaming problem. Second of all, like obviously other than Chris, Pete and Dan, it's a lot more difficult to like see you guys. So most of my gaming is done with very small numbers. And the third reason is that when I was first like building my game collection, which is only like of the last couple of years, part of me was like, I can either like buy a lot of experiences that require a lot of people, or I can try and like focus in on one specific area of the genre and try to like find the best of it, or at least explore it before I start like getting into like deeper waters, into like more treacherous territory, if you see what I mean. So like the 2-player scene as it was seemed like to be like the most comfortable place to explore, because my wife's always here. She enjoys playing games as much as I do. So I was like, well, there's a captive audience. I can start exploring the space with her, and I don't have to wait for loads of people to be around to play these games that I'm buying. So once I started like exploring that space, one company kind of like came to the fore for me, and we speak about them a lot, but that's just generally because they make some games that they make a lot of games that we tend to really enjoy, and that's Cosmos, because they have a whole like 2-player basically series. So like a whole like, you know, part of their catalog is dedicated to these 2-player games. And I'd started getting them. Lost Cities was the
classic.
Was the first one I played, and I know me and Chris, we've played that a lot, and that's this lovely little like set building game, but also that it's a wonderful like part of risk and reward to the experience, where you're each going on these little like expeditions to these far-flung places across the globe, and it's wonderfully evocative, and that like is one of my most like battered and like most played games that I own. Like the cards are pretty much all frayed at the edges, the board doesn't really settle down anymore, and they've come out with like a new version of it since, and I've been tempted to buy it, but part of me likes having this like old and battered version of this game that we really love. And then after Lost Cities, of course we've spoken before about Imhotep the Jewel as one of the Cosmos games on the podcast. Recently we were lucky enough, they sent us a copy of Kahuna to play, which is a super interesting 2-player game. It's wildly popular, and again, like most of their 2-player output, it's exceptionally simple. There's this little archipelago, and everyone has this little collection of wooden sticks which represent bridges. So a little like the wooden bits you get in Catan for roads, but they're bridges. And you play down a card, and depending on what card you pick, it'll have a certain island on it, and then you can put a bridge either from that island to another island, or from another island, as long as it connects to the island that you've got on your card, if that makes sense. If you've got the majority of bridges on that island around it, you now control it. So you can then put your little piece down, and there's this wonderful back and forth tug of war that Kahuna has, because you can also destroy bridges, which means that you can go from like having ownership of like 4 or 5 islands to within a couple of turns like completely be diminishing down to like 1 or 2. And I think Kahuna, actually, I spent a lot of time playing it with Richard from the We're Not Wizards podcast, and like we both really enjoyed it. And it's definitely one of those 2-player games that the more you play it with the same person, the better it will get, in terms of like being able to learn the intricacies and the nuances behind it, because it has a problem which quite a lot of 2-player games has, which is if one player knows it really well, they'll always just wipe the floor with you. And Kahuna's kind of frustrating in a way, because it's played over 3 rounds, and by like halfway through the second round, you'll know whether you're going to be winning or losing. So even though like it's a game that I think me and my wife really enjoy playing, I think it's definitely one of those ones where like if this is like your first 2-player game experience, like Lost Cities is definitely where to start, and then moving on to like Kahuna, and then finishing off with, and this is what this sort of like long spiel has all been about, which is like what I think is like the ultimate 2-player game, not even from Cosmos, but just like generally like available. If you want a 2-player game to play with your loved one and you're a fan of the hobby, then Targi is like the one. It is absolutely superb, and it is a 2-player game that manages to achieve the feeling of playing a big sort of like 4-player complex gaming experience, like the feeling of playing like Brewcrafters or Spirit Island or like Great Western Trail or Brass Birmingham or Roots, like those like games that you feel like you can only really get the best out of when you've got tons of people around the table. Those complex crunchy experiences, like it manages to do all that with just 2 players, and it is exceptional. Like we love it. Each game takes about an hour and a half to play because you really are like crunching through and making decisions, but it's just a simple worker placement. You have this board which is made up of these cards, so you have the same border cards that make up the border of the board every game, and then in the middle you have like a random assortment of cards that fill up the space, and on your turn you have these 3 little figures, and you put one of your figures on the outside of the board somewhere, and that will get you a certain resource, or it'll get you a certain ability or something like that. But once everyone's placed their 3 figures down, you imagine a line going from where your figure is, like straight across the board, either horizontally or vertically. And wherever those lines of your figures intersect will then allow you to pick up that card from the middle of the board space that you're playing with. And that card in the middle are important because they're either other resources and items that you can pick up, like dates and salt and pepper, but they're also like cards that will represent victory points for the end of the game. So the lovely thing that Targi does is like every single turn is this worker placement game where you're just putting figurines down, but you're always having this duality of thought where do you go for the resources you need by placing them on the outside of the board, or do you play a more of a cunning game this turn to make sure you get the card you want from the center of the board? Because if you don't plot out where you're wanting to put stuff on the outside, you'll easily miss getting the things from you want from the center of the board because the playing space is so small, and with the 2 of you playing, you occupy basically all spaces by the end of a turn, and you can easily miss out on what you want. Right, quite a lot of the turns as someone puts down something and just like, I knew you were gonna that's exactly what I wanted. And even though that's genuinely like the thing I look to avoid in a worker placement game, I think because this is only 2 players, and when it comes around to the next round you get first pick anyway, the choices you make are flexible enough that those kind of things don't frustrate you as a player. Like if someone does something and it blocks you from doing what you actually wanted that turn, it's very easy for them to just like spin around and go, well, if I can't do that, I can easily do X, Y, and Z. And Chris, you and I have played it, Targi, and every time I play it, I just come away from it and I feel like I've had like a genuine, I know this sounds a bit weird, but like a genuine like board game experience. Like I don't feel like something has been reduced down to just a 2-player because it was easy. It feels like I'm having like, and I'm not reducing a 4-player game down to 2 players and limiting the experience. I feel like I'm having like a full experience, like a full anthology of a game.
Yeah, because essentially it's cards. And I've always loved those board games where the cards are the board, and instantaneously it becomes this wonderful modular experience, and instantaneously there's that sense of replayability, and that grid reference mechanic is something that Targi is famous for, and I keep seeing it coming up in people's favourite 2-player games, games to play with 2 players. It keeps coming up, and it's been around for a little bit of time now, and I've seen other games do this kind of a good reference thing. You were mentioning Imhotep, for example. Imhotep the Duel on a very micro level has a little bit of a Targi element with that, using the grid reference. And what I quite like also about Targi, like many games of this ilk, that even though, yes, Sam may go where I want to go, you're always getting something. You're never going away from a go empty-handed, like, oh, I've put everything into this and I've come out with nothing. And who knows, there'll be that one moment where actually that accident can actually be quite prosperous for you in the future. And the possibility of that coming up is what mitigates against that frustration, which is often something prevalent in workplace of games. And there's just something quite nice about the fact that you have to deal out the board, and yes. you can literally pack the board away into a single pile, and the portability of that. I mean, yes, there's lots of other little tiny bits and pieces that you get with it, but the idea that it's something I could just stick in my bag and go traveling with, and I could put on the table in a caravan somewhere, or in a yurt, is quite lovely, really. And it's something substantial. It doesn't feel like one of those flash in the pan kind of double games.
And it's such a competitive experience, which I think is a thing that I don't really feel like I get in Lost Cities or Kahuna or Imitate the Jewel, because I think all of those games suffer from the same thing, where because you're playing such an intimate game with one other person, you can very easily tell whether you're on top or you're not. And I think it's a bit more overt when you're not doing so well or your strategy isn't working. Whereas Targi is an exceptionally balanced and competitive experience that every time that we've played it, that I've played it, the scores have been 1 or 2 between the players. And it's been broadened out even more recently because they released the expansion, which is called Targi the Expansion, which is very 5 to 5 on a Friday. But luckily, it all fits in actually the original box. So now I've just got one box which has got everything I need in it, and that expands the board out. So now you have sand dunes, which if you want to, you can place your figure on a sand dune rather than on the border of the board, which has a twofold effect. First of all, because you're not placing your figure on the outside of the board, that opens up the possibilities to the other player. They can suddenly have more freedom to move and get what they want. But then it also means that you have access to these insane abilities that really change how the game is playing and tweak the rules a lot more. So the expansion does again just exactly what I want from a big box expansion. I recently got the Rails to the North bolt-on for Great Western Trail, and what that does to the game is exactly what Targi the Expansion does to the original Targi. Just adds enough of that depth and grit and spice to the experience that you, as a player, especially if you know the game very well, it's not analysis paralysis. Instead, because you've got more decisions to make, instead it's asking you as a player to just think more about what you're going to do, which I think is a slight tweak and difference in definition, but it makes a lot of difference in terms of it's not just throwing more mechanics at you and going wow, what do you do now? It's going have you considered this move? Yeah, it's really, really good. And I think if you don't have a lot of space, or you're not always going to get a crowd of 3 or 4 people together, or if you don't know if you really like those crunchy 90-minute long board game experiences, then you can do no wrong with playing Targi, because it will give you that experience. If it's pretty much the same size as a hardback book on your shelf, and it's genuinely really, really good and refreshing, and it's permanently in that 2-player little part of my collection that I have. It'll always be there. Love it.
That was another episode of Staying In with Daniel Frost, Peter Willington, Sam Turner and myself, Chris Darby. Thanks again to Dalton and Wells for sending us a review copy of Volume 1 of Descent into Dread. You can pre-order this from Comixology at the bargain price of £6.39. Thanks also to Rowan for getting in touch with us via Instagram and recommending the new RPG Alice is Missing, which replaces face-to-face tabletop interaction with text messaging as the platform for the game, which personally for me is a really interesting concept and actually a really novel way of playing an RPG that fits in perfectly into this current lockdown that we find ourselves in. If, like Rowan, you want to say hi at all or ask a question, feel free to contact us. Our email is stayinginpod@gmail.com. Alternatively, reach out to us on your favourite social media platform. @StayingInPod has you covered there. Lastly, we've been enhancing our page on Spotify and have put together a playlist of music that relates to over 100 episodes of games, films and TV shows that we have discussed. If you search for Staying In, you will find us there. At the moment, we have a special blend of playlists to cater for every listening need. There is iced tea for the cool and chilled sounds, chamomile for the relaxed and meditative, with sugar for the in-jokes and silliness, and lastly, extra strong for the more intense flavours. As per Pete and Sam's recommendation, we've just added a track from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 and Thrasher presents Skate and Destroy to the mix. If you have any recommendations at all, please get in touch. Till next time, bye!